So, welcome everybody to this Taproot Foundation event. If you meant to be at a nonprofit's guide to teaming up with skilled volunteers, you're in the right place. If you didn't mean to be here, please stay. The more the merrier. You're welcome. So, we're so thrilled to connect you and connect with each of you at this event and hopefully through our programs after this webinar. I am so excited to share with you information about our own nonprofit and how business pro bono programs might be able to help you and your organizations build upon your capacity to do even more great mission-driven work. So who am I? I'm Stephanie Campbell, and I'm the Director of Impact Strategy here at Taproot Plus. Prior to joining Taproot Plus about a year ago, I've been in the nonprofit sector since 2007 in a variety of different roles, and specifically in the K-12 education startup education ecosystem space. So if you are working on anything in that sector, please reach out to me. It's very close to my heart, as are the arts and arts marketing. I did marketing for nonprofit touring Broadway shows for 7 years. So that's a little bit about me. I'm joined by a couple of my Taproot colleagues in the chat. So Megan is directly from our help desk. So she has a lot of insight because she's really the one in the day-to-day resolving a lot of the challenges that our nonprofits and volunteers are having in real time. And then Sierra is joining us as well from our marketing team. I'll also put a plug in for my colleague, Josh Grohl, who is our very first dedicated nonprofit success coach. So his role is to be there to provide one-on-one support and to create programs and systems that specifically support our nonprofits. He's unable to be here today because he is ill, but you can reach him at nonprofitsuccess@taprootplus.org. And his sole purpose at our organization is to support individuals like you. So please, please, please do reach out. Just a couple housekeeping items. All attendees today will be muted throughout the event, but please don't hesitate to make use of the chat box, and squirrel. I see someone said that they're a Broadway enthusiast, so please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to talk Broadway and could do so all day. Maybe that'll be the next webinar. But please do ask chat questions through the Q&A and make use of that feature. So a little bit about what we're going to do today. First, we went over introductions. We'll go over, Megan, I'm just one slide back. We'll go over who we are, the need and pro bono defined. I'll give you a little more information about who we serve, the top 10 sectors we serve, and then the most common skills available with our volunteers through Taproot Plus. Next, we'll talk through 4 simple tests you can use to decide to pro bono or not to pro bono. And then last, we can answer some direct questions from you all in the chat if there is any time left remaining, or you can reach back out to us as a follow-up. So we'll dig right in. So the Taproot Foundation is a nonprofit ourselves that supports other nonprofits. So when we say we understand your challenges, we intimately understand your challenges because we're right there with you ourselves. We drive social change by leading, mobilizing, and engaging professionals in pro bono service. And since the early 2000s, Taproot has partnered with more than 8,400 social change organizations and 24,000 volunteers. And we equate this to about 260 million in donated professional services. So in addition to our pro bono programs and our corporate social responsibility consultancy work that we do for very large top Fortune 100, top Fortune 10 organizations, we're leaders of a global pro bono network, and we're committed to advancing the pro bono movement through research, education, and events like this one. So Taproot was founded with the mission to fill the massive resource gap present in the social sector. Organizations who may have the solutions to our world's most pressing social challenges remains systemically under-resourced. And I'm sure I am preaching to the proverbial choir here. The average US nonprofit reports spending only 8.7% of its budget on overhead, which is compared to 20% average spent by the traditional companies in the private sector. So there's a large chasm between what our for-profit organizations can spend on internal infrastructure and staff development versus what nonprofits are able to allocate to that. And this ultimately affects our nonprofit bottom lines, the mission that we're delivering to our community members. And it means social organizations are missing out on staff development or hiring. They're making do without entire departments, or they're cutting costs by continuing to delay key capacity building investments. And I know personally, many people, forego entire salaries for themselves or raises for themselves to be able to afford other priorities. So that's the problem we're really here to solve. So to put it simply, most organizations tackling social problems do not have ready access to resources, funding, or staff expertise that they need to fully accomplish their vital missions. And the lack of ability to invest in ourselves really saps our ability to build these strong, resilient, and sustainable ongoing organizations. And in the current inflation climate we're living in right now, charitable organizations are really feeling this strain more than ever. So that's where pro bono can help, and that's where we want to step in. Taproot Foundation bridges the nonprofit resource gap by providing you all with easy connections to skilled volunteers who are willing to provide their tech, marketing, HR, strategy, finance, so many experience pro bono or for free. So we'll talk today about specifically how you can tap into that pro bono support. So, what is pro bono? So, generally, when people hear the term pro bono, they think of legal. But pro bono is so much more than free legal service. It's donated professional services that benefit organizations working to improve society. Through a study we completed with the CECP in 2015, and then we actually updated that data recently in 2019, Taproot determined the average value of an hour of pro bono service is $195. So, on average, our pro bono projects take about 30 hours of volunteer time to complete, which means that each project you complete through Taproot Plus is the equivalent of 5,800, about $6,000 you wouldn't need to spend. So by infusing pro bono support through your departments, you can save on your bottom line, build capacity, and become more sustainable over the long term. I wanted to share as well some of the most common volunteer skills that are currently available on the platform. So the number one skill the volunteers available through our platform have are communication skills. It's not super surprising because, of course, it's a pretty generic skill set. But one thing I want to flag is that you don't necessarily have to be working with a communication specialist to identify someone who really has those strong writing skills or presentation skills that might be relevant in their role. The second biggest skill is web development. So that's a huge one we see nonprofits tap into. And then these are literally all in rank order, and we'll make sure to send you this so you have this list. But this list should be a really great guide for you for what types of project areas you can depend on Taproot Plus to find resources for. The areas that tend to be really competitive are, I'm back just one, but grant writing, marketing strategy, and web design. Okay, now you can change it with me. Thanks. So the top 10 sectors that we serve, and like I mentioned, true to my heart, K-12 education, far and away, 25% of the projects completed through Taproot Plus are in the education sector. And beyond that, community development, which apologies, I typed that twice, youth development, health and nutrition, arts and culture, environment. If you do not see your area here, have no fear. That does not mean you are not welcome on our platform. It just means that it's not in one of the top 10 categories that our volunteers tend to gravitate to. And if you tick many different boxes, you're not alone. Many nonprofits straddle multiple of these areas, and you can tag more than one. So you might be wondering, this is great in theory, but how do I actually do this? So here we go. As promised, we were going to talk about the 4 different tests and the certain qualities that all successful pro bono engagements that we've seen throughout our robust experience doing this work tend to share. So we've taken those qualities and we've turned them into 4 screening tests you can use to evaluate your needs for a pro bono opportunity. And they are scope, urgency, knowledge transfer, and board and staff readiness. So the first test is scope. 2 things we want you to think about. 1, how big is the project? And how well defined is my area of need? This isn't to say you can't have big projects. We've seen many nonprofits get their entire website built through a pro bono agreement or project. But it just means you have to be really specific and be very well defined. If you have a need that might be too big or too loosely defined for a pro bono project, we have 2 thoughts for you. 1, trust your instincts. You know your nonprofit best, and you have a really good sense of what can or cannot be accomplished through a single project. 2nd, consider getting an expert in the field to help you scope the scope of the project. So before you even dig into the project, have an expert help you lay out what you need done. And you can do this through sessions, and we'll tap into that in a moment. So this happens a lot for projects specifically like websites, which seem to just grow and grow in scope. We call that scope creep, which you need to be a little bit careful about to make sure you're protecting that special relationship with your volunteer. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But if your need will make a great sized project that's well defined, you can tick the scope test box. And let's see, the next one is urgency. So if the need is urgent, meaning very bad things will happen directly as a result of this project not happening, then that's a no-go. Do not use pro bono service for something that might shutter the doors of your nonprofit, because pro bono service tends to take a little bit of time and investment, and because sometimes without that fiscal guarantee, it's not necessarily the best thing to put something up for that could be a potential major risk, right? So, for example, bringing in an event planner for your virtual gala the night before it happens. Please do not do that. Pro bono is a really awesome resource for many, many reasons. But one of the things it's not great for is when there's an absolute urgent tomorrow deadline. So pro bono projects generally get done 50 to 100% slower than we might expect them to. And that's paid services with consultants tend to happen more slowly too. So we all have this fallacy where we think we can do more in less time, and pro bono actually exacerbates that a little bit. So if it's urgent and you need it tomorrow, this is probably not the project that this makes the most sense for. The next test is knowledge transfer. So someone on the Taproot team said the form of pro bono with the least knowledge transfer needed would be a plumber coming in to fix your sink. A very expensive, highly skilled person doesn't need any information about you or your organization. There's the sink. Fix it, please. This doesn't work with staff recruitment and retention strategy. You can't just point to the computer and say, there's the computer. Please create an effective strategy for us. There really has to be a lot of downloaded information exchanged to bring that individual up to speed to be able to support you. So, photography or video editing or a fundraising campaign can be a pro bono project that would fall somewhere in between. And you definitely don't need quite as much detailed knowledge as a recruitment and retention strategy for staff, but you still need to have an understanding of the essence of what you want to capture, how you want to tell your story. So, when you look at your list, are you confident you can and will transfer the required information to this consultant individual remotely? Are you going to rely on your board members to do that or team members? How will that play out? So that brings us to the next screening test. The last test is staff and board readiness. Does your organization really want to do this, or is this a pet project that you're thinking about on the side? Because in order for this to be successful, you might need the buy-in from the rest of your team, or something might come up where your capacity is strained and you're going to need someone else to step in and support. So if as an executive director you really want to try crowdfunding but your marketing director isn't bought into that idea, I would say that that might be a red flag for you to not move forward. So, what could work with skilled volunteers look like at your organization? Here's a quick example from a fellow nonprofit. This is the Chicago Family Health Center, and they're out to change the lives of Southside Chicago residents by providing access to critical dental, behavioral, and medical health services. Their nonprofit is building a healthier community, one patient at a time. So the CFHC initially reached out for pro bono support from Taproot because they needed to take serious action to reduce staff turnover. They ended up working with multiple Taproot skilled volunteers with the goal of building up their workforce through fresh HR techniques and policies. And Steph says, our amazing skilled volunteers helped us develop strong human resource processes for recruitment, onboarding, and retention. Our HR capacity has been truly transformed because of the service we received. Our turnover rate 2 years ago was 48%, and today it's 24%. So great success. And then we can drop the link to that blog if you want to learn a little bit more about that story. But many, many stories, just like Stephanie's story there, of success and relationships that have been built through Taproot Plus. So, what is the simplest way to connect with skilled volunteers? So now you have a good idea for how to scope a pro bono project and examples of what some of your fellow nonprofit organizations are doing with pro bono support. Now you're probably wondering, how do I find the person with the right skills to get the project done well and for free? And that's where Taproot can come in and help. So this is just a screen grab of the gateway entrance to our website, taprootplus.org. You can get connected with the support you need for free. We've made it simple and we've streamlined it through our online nonprofit volunteer match platform, Taproot Plus. So we designed Taproot Plus to be flexible and nimble, so any nonprofit can get skilled volunteers no matter how big they are, and any business professional or you as a nonprofit can also volunteer your services as well. But any professional can support that nonprofit no matter where they're located, and it's completely free to use. So this is our way of scaling up the service we've been typically providing on a smaller scale and making it more equitable and available to those, especially across the entire US. And from the safety of your own home, which became very relevant in the last 2 years here. So, or 3 years. Oh my goodness. How long have we been in this? But currently, Taproot Plus is open to registered nonprofits, public schools, and fiscally sponsored social good organizations across the US, the UK, the EU, India, and we also just launched in Canada. We have more than 85,000 active total viewers. or users. And in the next couple of weeks, will be completely accessible in all provinces. So we opened up some of our services to small businesses also to provide some extra support for them throughout the course of the pandemic. So small businesses are able to post session requests to our platform. So I think that's just great. We can scale our good. There's really no limit to the number of staff members at your nonprofit who can have an account on Taproot Plus. So later today, when we send out the recording to all of the registrants, please, 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 word of mouth is the greatest way, and referrals is the greatest way that other users hear about us and hear about this resource. So please do feel free to forward and share the love of Taproot Plus to a colleague or a peer that might be able to benefit from some of the virtual volunteer support. And again, there's no gotchas, there's no hidden fees. I download the app and surprise, I need to pay for it. That happened to me this morning. There's no sneaky gotcha fees here, or we're not going to come at you for extra cash. So please, we hope that you'll trust us and share. So Taproot is a nonprofit which really exists to serve other nonprofits, and the only cost, there is a cost, and it might be your most valuable resource, is your time and your energy that it takes to manage skilled volunteers. We all know sometimes having an intern can be more work than can be support sometimes. So please, please remember that your time is valuable and important, and use Taproot Plus wisely. So to get started, all you need to do is pull up your browser, and you can head on over to taprootplus.org. And then once there, you select that you are a nonprofit organization, and you can hit sign up or submit a request to get started. And then we'll need you to tell us just a few details, because we do screen every organization. And one of our screeners is on the call manning the chat today. If you have any questions detailed about that, she can tell you directly what she looks for. But we will do a check on your EIN number and verify that that the email handle that you are giving us is one that you readily use. So as a reminder, 501c3s, public school programs, or it's okay if you're early on in your journey, you can be fiscally sponsored as well, as long as you're fiscally sponsored in US, UK, EU, Canada, or India. That list is getting longer, which is fantastic. So once you've submitted all your account details and you've confirmed your email, you are ready to post your project. So you'll have two main options when submitting the request. You can do a full-blown, longer, larger scale, multiple month usually, or 12 weeks project, or you can choose to have a 1-hour consultative session. So before diving into the weeds of designing and posting a project, let's talk super quick about requesting a consultative session. So we've just updated the sessions platform. So forgive us a little bit if there might be a couple kinks or clunks or bugs still in there, because we've just rolled out this new feature. But we'd love for you to check it out, and we'd really love your feedback on how it works for you. But in case you're stuck or you aren't sure what your project might require, we've added this feature where you can request a 1-hour session with a subject matter expert and talk through your project or your particular project need, or just speak more generically about a topic. This has been really, really helpful. We've been getting really rave feedback. And on the other side, the volunteers really love it as well, because it's a really easy way for them to kind of dip their toe in the water about giving back. And I encourage you to try it from that side too. So this is a great option when you're brainstorming or you need fresh eyes on something that you've been staring at for hours. You're sourcing, neutral feedback, someone who's not your board to proofread something, or you need some quick answers on specific questions. It's also a great way to prepare for an in-depth pro bono project. So you'll let us know the type of consultation you're looking for and a brief description of your consultation needs or questions. And like I said, we just released some updates to the process to make it easier to match with a volunteer. So keep your eyes open to those changes. If you have tried sessions in the past, it might look a little bit different. So then the other side is projects. So examples of successful projects might be updating your HR policies, tech assessments, recommendations for taking programs or events online, designing social media graphics for you that you can manipulate, creative fundraising strategizing. We'll be following up from this event with our common projects catalog, and that can hopefully give you a lot of great information. I did see someone in the chat make a nod to Catch a Fire as well. They're also a wonderful resource, and they have some really great scoped projects over there as well. We are more the merrier, and we're here to help you. So yes, that is another great tool in this space. But drop a note in the chat if there's a specific project or session that you're considering, and we can give you a few tips about that. So when you're considering project requests, remember, be really clear and specific with what you want to leave the project having accomplished. This helps volunteer applicants know if they're a right fit. Show your passion and your excitement for the work that you do. Volunteers are really attracted to that and they see that. And then demonstrate your readiness. Any clarity you can provide on how you're going to implement the project or what you've done to prep really helps instill confidence for the volunteers when they're looking through the different projects and sorting through which one they might be interested in trying out. So, okay, so now your project has been sent for review. Our help desk team looked it over, they made it live on the site, or they might send it back to you and ask for like a slight modification here or there. And really they're using their experience and knowledge to make sure that you're positioned for success. So any feedback that they get is coming from a place of love and support. But congratulations. So then it's been submitted, it's ready for review. After the project is approved by our team, it gets its own listing page and we post your project to Taproot Plus. We share your project with the skilled volunteers by pushing it public on LinkedIn's volunteer marketplace. And then we send personal recommendation emails to volunteers who have registered on Taproot Plus and have the skills tagged in their account that align back to the skills necessary that you had cited are necessary for your project. So then you get the opportunity to interview applicants who have applied to work for you. So you hold the power, you have the reins. So if multiple volunteers apply for your posting, then you have the opportunity to set up a time to meet with them and interview them for their potential. So be selective, be careful, decide who you want to work with. We put the ability to screen for their skills on you, and it really empowers you all to make the choice of who you would like to work with. So once you select a volunteer you would like to move forward with, then your listing closes. There's an option that you could select to keep the project open to accept additional volunteers. Just like a job posting, though, sometimes volunteers see that and go, wait, why is that still open? So just be communicative with the volunteer that you're working with and make sure you're sharing with them about that. And you can manage all of your applicants through your project management page on Taproot Plus. So once you select a volunteer, this is where you will find our project resources library helpful. If you have any questions while you're going through the Taproot Plus registration or project posting process, please, please, please feel free to reach out to Josh, our nonprofit success coach, our help desk directly. A Taproot staff member is almost always on hand to assist if you happen to hit a bump on the road. I'll say one caveat to that though, what makes Taproot a little bit different is, we're a small but mighty team of experts, and we are, we take holidays like you all. And so it might be a moment before we get back to you, and then we're going to prioritize who we get back to and when. So please give us a little bit of grace, but we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can, and we are here to help. But we can tend to be a little under resourced ourselves sometimes, especially after something like a Memorial Day weekend, for example. We'll come back and have quite a queue to dig out from. So give us a little grace on the other side of those holiday weekends. So last, I just want to share some direct tips from our help desk about how to be successful. So one, be specific. Like I said, really the more details you can provide about the assistance you're looking for will really help you make a connection with the right volunteer. So one thing we have noticed is that on the volunteer side of the marketplace, many of our volunteers have, imposter syndrome. They go, I don't know if I have the right skills for this project. So what you want to do is put yourself in a position where you can really be empowered to assess that yourself, and not write a project that feels so intimidating that a volunteer might not, be eager to dive into. We've had this happen time and time again. So be prepared to share what information of training you could provide or what support you might want to give. Volunteers on Taproot Plus really run the gamut. You might be working with, the CMO from Disney who is interested in your project, or you might be working with an entry-level recent college graduate who's really looking to build their resume and is looking to grow their skills. So the level of experience and expertise is very vast. And so be really clear in the project post about what your project requires so that you're attracting the right level of experienced individual. And then remember, one thing that's very different from the nonprofit sector compared with the corporate sector is on the nonprofit side, and I'm one myself, we tend to be generalists, right? We wear a lot of hats. We have a ton of different skill sets. And I refer to myself lovingly as a Jill of all trades and an expert expert in none. Whereas in the corporate sector, in a 50,000 person organization, that individual is much more likely to be a very specific cog in a wheel. So a project that seeks all of that generality might not make the most sense for posting to Taproot Plus, but so the more specificity you can provide, or the more you can break up a project into different areas of specificity, that's going to serve the type of volunteers who are in our ecosystem better than something that's much more broad and general. And that's not to say that the generalists out there don't exist. They certainly do in the volunteer space. It's just with the increased demand we're seeing in the platform, you're going to be more successful the more specific you are. Also, yeah, like I mentioned, the volunteers could just feel overwhelmed by the scope of a project. If it looks like really, really huge, they go, I'm not sure that I want to redesign your entire website yet. But 2 weeks into working with you, maybe they will have completely fallen in love with your mission and your cause, and they turn into someone who's going to give you 20 hours a month of service for the next 5 years. But maybe that's not something they didn't want to get married on the first date, right? So just make sure that that first introductory conversation isn't like, will you marry me? And that it's an appropriate ask for that first touch point, and that you're really clear with clear with scope. And then, last tip, direct from the help desk. There's really no limit to the number of projects a nonprofit can post at one time. Caveat: there's no limit, but the limit is your bandwidth. So if we see you go in there and post 20 different projects, we're going to go, what is that individual's capacity to truly manage these 20 different projects? And we might ping you and say, which one of these is most important? Or so if you hear from us, that might be why. The other kind of no proviso is we have seen many people come through Taproot Plus and post like a generic job description. For example, we need a social media manager volunteer. That's a really common one. And that's not really what Taproot Plus was designed to do. It's really more for that finite project or session that has a clear beginning and has a clear end. So please don't take your general job description and throw that on the platform. You will probably get a return back that just says, hey, this isn't really the purpose for this. The other like warning red flag, kind of lots of nightmare stories we've heard, and not necessarily through Taproot Plus, actually, just with different volunteers and consultants. Please, please, please do not ever give away the keys to your social media accounts to a volunteer and then lose them. I've heard lots of stories of different individual users getting locked out of their social media accounts because that was one of the main things they wanted to offload off their plates. And so they handed that to a consultant, and then the consultant fell off the face of the earth. Then the owners of the accounts were now locked out of the communities that they had built, so much time, had invested so much time and effort into creating and building. So if you do decide to leverage a volunteer for specifically things like social media, I suggest asking them to create content that you would then post, or help you create a content calendar that would help you be more efficient in your own posting. But make sure that you're keeping the really important things like your passwords and your data close to heart and not giving that away. So anyway, with that, we are at 20 minutes remaining. I would love to open it up to questions, or Sierra and Megan can throw some of your questions you've had throughout the presentation my way, and I will do my best to respond to them. I make no promises to have every answer to every question. And I'm also going to take a drink of water. Okay, let's see. Oh, really good point Sierra just made in the chat. So I actually have been doing a lot of digging into our user data, and a lot of people assume that Taproot Plus is more for the well-established nonprofit organization, but actually what we've found is that our super users, or people who use Taproot Plus 5 or more times in any given year, actually tend to be the much newer or much smaller nonprofits that really do urgently need that capacity. So if you're sitting here thinking, I do not even have a full-time employee, I have a full-time gig, I started this nonprofit and I'm not really even sure where to start, you are not alone in our ecosystem. There are many, many, many Taproot Plus users just like you, who are just starting out, who maybe came from the for-profit sector and are getting into this universe. So please, please, please know that Taproot Plus is a place for you. You are welcome here. We are your people. Related to the first date concept, if a volunteer does want to expand beyond the initial proposal, should a new proposal be submitted? Our Coalition for Justice volunteer has been, so I have an honest response. I have a selfish response. We'll go with both. I would say, ideally for Taproot Plus, the way that we are funded is we're a nonprofit ourselves as well, and we report out on the impact that we've had in the community. And so the way that we are able to report on our impact is by reporting out on the projects that are tracked through the Taproot Plus system, which means it's really important to us that if at the very end of your project, you fill out that final survey that says, here's how many hours it was, here's how it went. If you don't do that, we don't have that information logged in the system, and that puts at risk our ability to be sustainable and exist. So that's a selfish reason. I would say yes, yes, yes. please create a new project. But in terms of, are we micromanaging the relationship you're creating outside of the platform with this individual volunteer? No, I mean, they're yours. If you have built a relationship with them and they are willing and able to support you beyond the scope of the initial project, that doesn't necessarily have to go through Taproot Plus. We won't mandate that, and we're not trying to hold that too tight. We exist solely for the purpose of you all getting the resources that you need. So however you can do that, that's what we want. You're welcome. Do we ever offer in-person volunteers? So in-person volunteers is a little more complicated through the platform. I think you can post in the platform that it is an in-person engagement. We are trying to get a little bit more specific with the density of the volunteers that are available to the platform and your ability to sort through them by geography. That is development that we are continuing to build upon as we are making adjustments and advancements to the platform. But right now it is a little more complicated to secure volunteers for in-person. I believe Volunteer Mark and Volunteer Match might be better resources for you. Volunteermatch.org, I believe, to identify opportunities for in-person volunteers. That said, our greatest density of volunteers stem from major metropolitan areas, especially ones where we have offices. So LA, New York, Chicago, San Francisco would probably be the cities where you would be most apt to find individuals who could be there on the ground for you. That said, we do have a lot of experts that could help with volunteer recruitment strategies. So I would say I'd pivot that and say, okay, I need in-person volunteers for this event. Let me find a Taproot Plus volunteer who's an expert in volunteer recruitment or marketing or awareness building, communication, who can help me build a strategy to attempt to recruit more in-person volunteers, or a campaign, or graphics for your social media to recruit volunteers. So sort of a two-pronged answer. But if you are in a rural area, I'm actually here in Kansas City. We have a couple here. But if you're in, rural Missouri, I doubt that's going to be a viable source for you. Would volunteers come from New York for a project in Philadelphia? I have no idea. I'm sorry. Maybe. You are welcome to try. I don't know that we are going to block you from trying that out. Oh, good advice from Sierra. Yeah, always check out your local community foundation, local volunteer boards. I'm sure we're not telling you anything you don't know, but your community foundation generally has a really good cache of volunteer resources for you for those more in-person events. what are the best sites to post job openings on a volunteer basis to start? Well, I would say so. We have a really strong partnership with LinkedIn, and they're doing a lot more in the volunteer space. So they have really leaned into going beyond just what traditional professional full-time roles would be, especially in, this sort of gig economy that we're leaning into. They're leaning into that. So I think you can absolutely post roles through some of the more traditional sites are starting to also um, dabble in volunteer postings as well. Any tips for making our project especially compelling to your most skilled volunteers? Um, so I would say one, your website, linking your website, and then making sure that your website um, does a great job of telling your own story and being like really clear about your mission and what you do. Our volunteers are usually following their hearts a lot. So maybe they're working in a corporate job and they're not as fulfilled by their day-to-day work and what they're doing, and they're really looking to fill a void that they're not able to fill through their day-to-day 9 to 5, and that's what's bringing them to that space. So what's really going to be compelling for them is your mission and your story and your purpose, because that's going to take them over the finish line beyond just the scope of the project itself. I would also say, unfortunately, as the platform currently exists in its current form, it's more complicated than we would prefer for you to make changes or updates to your profile after you've initially posted it. I'm so sorry about this. I promise it's a priority that we are working on. So when you first post that photo, be very selective about the photo you pick and make sure it tells that story that I was talking about, like the mission. Make sure it's of the community you're serving, or you all in action. Because when you default to the generic Taproot Plus, like default photo, it can really get lost in the mix of the scroll. And we find the ones that are really attractive are the ones that have like a bright, compelling photo that does a lot of the storytelling work for you. I would also say concision and clarity in your writing is important. So people are scrolling. So think of it more like a social media post. Like we all have that friend on Facebook who posts like a novel about their breakfast. Think about those first couple sentences at the top. Like I went to journalism school, so think about it as like the nut graph. What is the attention grabbing lead that's in that first couple sentences? That's going to give them all the information they want to know, and then pare it down to like the least important information at the bottom where that detail needs to be. So really do your best to summarize and grab their attention at the front. Also, our team takes over the responsibility of creating the strong headline that's attention grabbing. And that's something we've done because we've developed a pretty good, solid skill of making edits to that to make it compelling. But we are willing to, workshop that with you and alongside you. So we're going to do our best to make sure that headline is attention grabbing, but really make sure you're providing that detail and that crisp, concrete language in those first 4 sentences. So even just running it by another person on your team or someone on your board and having them look at it with fresh eyes and say, does this make sense? Do you get this? Because in the nonprofit sector, we tend to use a lot of jargon. And what we'll see is a lot of these jargony words that don't land with people. So try to just look at it from fresh eyes, remove jargon, keep it short and tight, make it clear, and paint a picture of what success looks like. What does done look like? I think that's a Brene Brown quote, paint done. And I think those are the ones that are really going to grab people. Yes, we do have volunteers all over, but again, like I said, the physical on the ground volunteer density is just a little more challenging in some of the other smaller areas. And it is absolutely a benefit. So one of the comments I saw is one of the big benefits of Taproot Plus is the ability to connect with volunteers who aren't necessarily in your backyard. Some volunteers come to the platform and they say, it's really important to me to find someone else in, Toledo, Ohio. And so, okay, you can sort and look for, organizations in Toledo, Ohio. But most others are much more committed to the cause. And so they don't necessarily need to be supporting something that's right there in their backyard. They're really caring about, so like, for example, right after, um, when we see very public news events occur that inspire people, we will see a influx of individuals looking to support causes relevant to those issues. So if there is something in the media that is happening related to the cause that you are supporting, that is a really great time to post your project to Taproot Plus, because that is when volunteers are especially motivated or invigorated to go and support that cause. So if your issue has been in the headlines, if there is a recent event that has brought attention to your issue, that's when we're going to see traffic and excited about that issue. Another secret trick, sorry, Sierra, you're not going to like this. But if you write to us and ask us to boost your project post, we will, just a limited number of times. So we can't guarantee that we'll boost it or promote it right away. But until that becomes a really big challenge for us, we will boost or promote your post through our social channels. We can't guarantee it, but in many, many cases, we are able to elevate the exposure that your project or sessions request would have. And we're definitely more apt to post or publicize the ones that are especially timely or relevant because of insert recent news or media event here. Any last questions? Everything you want me to do, but you don't exactly know where to start. How would one word that not scare every volunteer of the platform off? So I would say this might not be getting at your question, but a lot of times we'll get messages to our inbox that are essentially just like an SOS, like, I'm overwhelmed, help, help, SOS. Two channels for you. One, I'm overwhelmed, help, SOS. That is the perfect time to reach out to Josh, our nonprofit success coach. That is what he is here for. So he is such a breath of fresh air calm that I think just the therapy of speaking to him, I think, is really helpful, even for me. So he is there and he can meet with you one-on-one and probably just like listen to you vent first, and then also support you with, okay, let's talk about priorities. And he'll probably also ask you about your skills. Where are you really strong and where are you not? What shouldn't you focus on trying to learn yourself, and what should you focus on attempting to outsource, right? So he would be a fantastic resource if you're in that sense of overwhelm and you don't know where to start. The other thing is, that's really what sessions was intended for. So that's less like, I don't know where to start, whether I should focus on fundraising or focus on my annual report or my marketing strategy. If you are more specific in the area, usually marketing is a really common one. If you're very if you know you need support in marketing, but you don't know how to slice up that pie you have to put into marketing in both terms of your time and your limited financial resources, say like, do I need a LinkedIn account and a Facebook account and a Twitter account? And what the heck is TikTok? Like, if that's where you, if you have more specificity in the category, that's where sessions can come in really handy. Is now I can speak to someone who has more expertise in that general category area and can give you more concrete guidance than Josh, say, would be able to provide as more of a generalist who can support your ability to leverage Taproot Plus as a tool. So anyway, on that, I think we will wrap. I will plug, yes, sessions is a great way to prep for projects and help refine the scope. So it's a little meta, but sometimes we see projects that are scoping projects. And I have no problem with the meta meta of that. It's totally okay to say my project is literally, I need help scoping this project, or strategic planning type items, planning the plan, very, very common. But just spend some time, peruse through the projects that are posted on Taproot Plus, and try to look at it from the lens of, what would you apply for? Like, which ones would you see that would attract you? And then ask yourself, why? Why would I apply for this one over this one? And do that before you write yours. And I think that would be a really helpful exercise to go through. Please reach out. We're here. You are not alone. We see you. We hear you. You matter. And thank you for everything that you're doing to make, the world a better place. We need you.